and sixes. 10, 9, 8, 76ers.
Everyone, this is UK 76ers. My name is Ben Glassford, and last night the Philadelphia 76ers beat the Houston Rockets by 118 points to 113. This was a bizarre, probably isn't the right word. It was first half fantastic, really nice, relaxing game. I never really felt worried or threatened by the Rockets because we played unbelievably well. And then the second half, in true Sixer fashion, we made it a nail biter when it absolutely didn't need to be. It did, raise the issue that there seems to be some sort of issue whereby whenever we take huge leads, we take our foot off the gas or don't quite go for the jugular, because there was a nice period in that third quarter where if we just keep going the way we did in the first half, well, we could have Embiid not play the whole of the fourth, or at least only play 2-3 minutes, if that. But we let them back into it to a point where it was a 5-point game at the end, and it was incredibly nervous for absolutely no reason. But before we go into what happened last night, usual announcements. USA Sports merch. Please check their stuff out. Fantastic stuff. They got all your sports needs covered, from American sports, UK-based retailer. It's not one of the big sites like NBA.com, and the thing is, it gives a much better service than the likes of NBA.com. I'm not sure who used NBA Store. It's not brilliant in terms of how it gets to you and personability and whatever else, so I would highly recommend USA Sports merch. On top of that, Visible, thanks very much again for providing me some awesome stats for last night's games, stats which of course I will be using in today's video. And again, quickly, I will just say that me and Sixers Bobby put up a podcast on Saturday. We talk all things Sixers, and if you guys want to come on it, just give me an email. My email is linked in my Twitter bio. Indeed, you can tweet me. You can leave a comment on one of these, whatever way you find it easier to contact me, do so. Contact myself or Sixers Bobby, and we'll look to get you on as soon as we can. Right, let's look at yesterday's game. So we didn't have Ben Simmons, and we saw what happened when we didn't have Ben Simmons last time around when we played the Portland Trailblazers in Philadelphia, and it was an absolute car crash. We couldn't defend, we couldn't hit threes, and we struggled. So I was expecting something similar, to be quite frank, because the Rockets, they're not the same pace and space sort of thing that they were last year under D'Antoni, where they, played small ball with Tucker at the 5 and whatever else. But they still have a plethora of good three-point shooters, your Eric Gordons of the world, your Daniel Houses, Ben McLemore's, whatever else. So I was kind of expecting, it's not nice to expect us to struggle, but I was expecting us to struggle throughout this game, because I thought they'd really put us to the sword from the three-point line. And I looked for all the world when that first quarter started that they're going to do so. I think, the Rockets hit 4 early threes, including 2 from DeMarcus Cousins, and we expect the likes of Gordon to do well from 3. I think it was 3 of 9 by the end of the game. But when DeMarcus Cousins starts hitting threes, and don't get me wrong, he's not bad 3-point shooter, but some of them are quite obnoxious. It's just it looks like you're in for a long evening. But we responded. We responded by hitting our own threes, which was a really good sight to see, because the thing is that we've seen statistically, and we've seen through the eye test as well, when we don't have Ben Simmons on the floor, we can't hit threes, because he's the one that assists these threes. He creates this space, and we struggled. And how we got these threes was that we really pushed on in transition, and the fast break points, I think we got about 25 fast break points, which is a crazy amount, and that's how we created our own space for our shooters. We got out in transition quickly, more often than not through a Matisse Thybulle steal, who was amazing this evening. He had 4 steals, 1 block, 5 points, only 1 3, but it's something he really helped contribute to this game, and he locked up John Wall. But whenever a steal was made, we pushed up the other end. We weren't wasteful with it, and I have accused this team of being wasteful in the transition and wasteful on the fast break. We were none of that this evening. Seth Curry hit some. Danny Green hit 4. Seth Curry finished on 25 points, actually, playing point guard. He was fantastic. Admittedly, his assist-to-turnover ratio wasn't that brilliant. Although it's almost 1 for 1. But he still did a great job nonetheless. And that's what we want, because you can't have our 3-point game be solely reliant on Ben Simmons, because there are inevitably going to be games where we have to sit him. Admittedly, don't miss many, but we will have to sit him because we want to play this safe. We don't want it to come to what it was last year in the playoffs, where we don't have one of Embiid or Simmons. So we're going to play it safe, and we're going to make sure that they're both fully fit for the playoffs. Admittedly, I think today was just illness. It wasn't COVID related. It was just illness. So I'm sure he'll be back to hitting the court soon enough. That was really nice that we worked out that issue of how to get threes without Ben Simmons. Do we still need a backup floor general? Absolutely, we do. Be that George Hill, be that DeLon Wright, be that Kyle Lowry, maybe, I don't know. But this is nice to see at the very least. We saw Seth do some playmaking. Thankfully, we didn't see Danny Green doing any. I assumed that somehow he'd end up being a bit of a playmaker. We saw Tyrese Maxey get some minutes, and he did typical Tyrese Maxey things, finish on like 10 points. And you know how he gets his points. It was mid-range floaters. It was, driving and getting to the hoop. And he was fantastic. And, there were so many times where he could have had more if refs actually started giving him calls, but that'll come as, when he starts, making his name a well-known household name in the NBA, which I'm sure he will do soon enough. That first quarter, we were absolutely fantastic. We finished on 38-24 at the end of the first. Embiid had a couple early fouls, so we had to miss a bit towards the tail end of the first. But the thing is, Embiid had near enough a 30-point triple-double. Embiid had, what did he have? 31 points, 11 rebounds, 9 assists, 2 steals, and 1 block. And again, it probably wasn't even his best game. It was relatively inefficient. You can tell his back's still playing up, no thanks to LeBron James. And look, I don't want to vilify LeBron James. I'm 100% certain he didn't mean it. But it is frustrating how you can see that Embiid hasn't been the same player since because of that negligent move by LeBron. But look, I don't know what's been said behind closed doors, but I think it would be nice if LeBron just issued an apology. Because the thing is that, especially in the NBA, it's a sport league where the players have a real sense of camaraderie. And you see it whenever there's any sort of injury happens. Everyone, rallies around the guy, but regardless of what team they play for, and wishes them all the best, etc. But for whatever reason, LeBron hasn't apologized. Look, we don't know what happened. Maybe he just said to Embiid privately or text or whatever else. Look, I'm really sorry. And if he has done, fair enough. But I think it would be nice to see him publicly apologize because he showed no remorse on the court, and that's fair enough. Yeah, caught him in the heat at the moment. But I did think it was a real shame that he hasn't, or at least as far as we know, he hasn't come out and said anything because Embiid's game is suffering and he's playing the best season he had. And I'm sure LeBron doesn't want it on his conscience that Embiid isn't playing the best basketball he had because you injured him in something that just wasn't a basketball play at the end of the day. But that's just my, little thing over. It's not me trying to vilify LeBron. I like LeBron James, but that's just something that I think should be done, really. I think, on any level, regardless if you're a LeBron or if you're just some role player, two-way G League or whatever else, that's something that should be done. We go into the second quarter, and it was business as usual. We continued how we left off in the first. 31-19, and we brought out the 2-3 zone once again, which almost seems like a bit of a cheat code. And we didn't have Ben Simmons; we had Thibault leading it. Like I said, Thibault did a fantastic job on John Wall, and they haven't really got anyone else that can create for them. So if you keep John Wall quiet, then you keep the Rockets quiet. And there's no coincidence that John Wall started to pick up in the second half, and that's when the Rockets started to pick up. You see the correlation here. Of course, with Embiid's fouls, it meant that Dwight had to play a few minutes, and Dwight reverted back to his moronic self. Needless offensive fouls, missing layups. He had Eric Gordon in the post, who's about 6'4". Dwight obviously is near enough 7 foot, and he didn't shoot. He shot over Gordon, missed, and it was all down to that he wasn't aware. He wasn't aware of who was guarding him. He wasn't aware where he was in terms of the hoop, and he rushed everything. And when you rush things, this is what happens: you miss shots, you miss easy layups, and thankfully it didn't come back to bite us, but it could do another time. It's just little things like that. And Isaiah Joe got minutes. And those of you who will see on my Twitter, I've wanted Isaiah Joe to get the Furkan Korkmaz minutes. Look, Korkmaz had a nice little stretch, and I'm done with him. I'm really done with him. He's not consistent. He's not. You can't rely on him from the 3-point line when that's meant to be his main asset. That in fact he's a 3-point shooter. And I look at what Isaiah Joe does. In the second quarter, he came on, started it. There was a steal. He had a hit 3. He had a really nice assist to Matisse on the fast break, and he took 2 charges. That was all in the span of the start of the second quarter. And the thing is that he's not far off Korkmaz. I think offensively, his shot seemed better. I think in the overall offensive game, Korkmaz probably is better. But then you look at defensively, he's quite wiry, and I'm sure when he puts on a bit more strength, he'll be a hell of a lot better. But he already looks better on defense. So I don't really get what's the point of playing Furkan when you've got this guy like Isaiah Joe, who's not far off him, if not as good as him, can develop way more, and it's in our interest to see that he develops. So give him the minutes that Korkmaz is getting, and then, what I think? I think you trade Korkmaz and use him as a piece if you want to get Muscala, if you want to get George Hill, if you want to get Wayne Ellington, if you want to get DeLon Wright, use him as part of that trade with a Mike Scott or something. That's what I would do with Furkan Korkmaz, maybe a second-round pick, but I think that might just be enough as it is. But anyway, that was rather frustrating on the Dwight side, and indeed the Korkmaz side, but Isaiah Joe was a breath of fresh air in that game, and it wasn't in the whole game, really. We went on with the zone in place. We went on a 17-3 run. The Rockets could not figure it out at all, and that's how we ended up with it was a 26-point cushion at the half. I think the lead was even as high as 29 at some point. We had 11 first half threes. Seth Curry, 3 of 5 from 3. He looked back to his best. Look, he was playing the point, which isn't really his thing. He can do it, but it's not really his thing. I prefer him as that 2 guard, of course. But he had a really good game. Like I said, hitting his 3. Danny Green was in the, what I think of Danny Green. It's either he hits everything or misses everything. He was in a hit everything sort of mood. Makes life a hell of a lot easier for all of us. Of course, Embiid pitched in with 1 or 2 threes as he normally does. But it was just a really good professional first half performance. It was fun. It was relaxing. I never felt worried. And then the second half kicks in. Embiid, it seemed to just, because I think he only had 7 points in that first half. He just sort of just like, it was like someone switched on and he's just like, oh yeah, I need to get 25, 30 points this game, don't I? So he just went to it. 12 points in that third quarter, all rather easily in true Embiid fashion. But then the Rockets got on a run, an 11-0 run, and that was partly because their defense picked up. Their man-to-man defense was fantastic, and you've got to give them credit for that. We really stifled this offense. They forced turnovers. I think we had something obnoxious like 20 turnovers in this game, and it wasn't good enough. But thankfully, because we capitalized on their turnovers with the fast break points, it wasn't as bad. But the thing is, this lead just kept chipping away, and we were sleepwalking into letting the Houston Rockets get back into the game, which is eventually what we did. The man-to-man defense was fantastic, and it was also partly because our offense became stagnant, became lackadaisical. We didn't really have any direction. Players stopped moving, they stopped driving, they stopped trying to make cuts, or stopped trying to, move the defenders. And when you don't move defenders, it makes defending that much easier. We just got a bit directionless. And the thing is, this has become something which, as I alluded to before, has become something where we give up leads far too easily, and then before you know it, they're back in the game. We did against the Lakers. Thankfully, we won it on the last-minute shot from Tobias Harris. We did against the Hornets, the most recent game of the Hornets at Charlotte. Thankfully, we didn't. Thankfully, after we held the win, we consolidated the win. But the thing is this happens far too often, where we go to 15 to 20-point leads, maybe even 25, and we just let them come back into the game. And we know that the injury record that Joel Embiid has, it's in our interest to have it so he plays as little minutes as possible. So that means when you get to that third quarter, when you're 26 points up, you're like, let's keep going, keep our foot on the gas, so by the time the third quarter ends, we don't need to play Joel. Because how infuriating would it be if last night when the Rockets came back and Embiid was playing the majority of that fourth towards the tail end, how infuriating would it be if he goes down, hurts his back again, aggravates, and he's out for a month? It's needless. It really is needless. And the more he plays, the more that we run the risk of him getting injured. And when it's unnecessary like this against a depleted Rockets team, which has no Oladipo, no John Wall, no Christian Wood. John Wall's, of course, playing. He had a fantastic second half. When they're missing 2 of their best players, there is really no excuse for this to go as down as tightly as it did, especially when you have that 29-point lead. So that's something that Doc needs to address. It's just taking their eye off the ball, and it's a mentality thing. And it's inevitably going to be easy to take your eye off the ball when you have this lead. You have this cushion. Maybe you try things you wouldn't normally be doing if it's a 2-3-point lead, or if you're down, or if you're tied. But you've got to stay professional. This is NBA players. They're good at what they do. Jayshawn Tate had a really good game for the Rockets. I thought that's the first time I've seen him properly. Really nice player. Of course, you had DeMarcus, you had John Wall. And they just kept chipping away at their lead. And it's carried on into the fourth. Our first field goal in that fourth quarter came at the 7-minute mark. And that was partly because we started on that fourth quarter. We started Maxey, Isaiah Joe, Furkan, Scott, and Howard. You're asking for teams to come back when you play that side. You can't. You've got to have. I've said it so many times before. You've got to have one of Ben. Of course, he wasn't playing. So you've got to have one of Ben Simmons. You've got to have one of Tobias Harris. You've got to have one of Joel Embiid on the court at all times. Just so we've got some sort of consistent offense. Even in this game, even someone just like Seth Curry. So you can give the ball to and he can do something. That was the worry. You looked at this and you're like, I'm not worried if I'm a Rockets guy. If I'm them, this is when I'm thinking, okay, we can really, really make inroads into this 6 lead. And they did. Like I said, first field goals at the 7-minute mark. I mean, we had a couple of free throws before, don't get me wrong, but the Rockets just kept going and going and going to the point where it became an unnecessarily tight game. Now, of course, I'm happy with that first half performance and indeed with the win, because why wouldn't I be? And the thing is, this is just one game in a 72-game season. Things like this happen, blips happen, losses happen, wins happen, and not every win is going to be the nicest win going. But when you see something that's consistently played with this team, that's when I think you've got a right to be a bit concerned or maybe angry. And this is an issue that's consistently played this team. And as of yet, it hasn't come back to bite us, but it will eventually. And I'd rather have this sorted out now so we don't have this issue in the playoffs. So we don't throw a game away in a 7-game series against the Nets or the Bucks or the Celtics or whoever else, because every game matters in the playoffs. This issue needs to be eradicated now. And the more it rears its ugly head, the more worried you should be about this team. Look, we're going to make moves. We're going to make trades. We're going to do something in the buyout. And inevitably will change how this team plays and how they operate. But we still can't rest on our laurels. This has to be eradicated right now. Because at the end of the day, it's not even about ability. It's about a lack of professionalism. It's about a lack of mentality. And that should be easy enough to drill into someone, that you've got to be focused 100% of the time. To professional athletes, that shouldn't be hard. But yeah, thankfully, we just about managed to hang in there. We did our best to throw it away. Look, Matisse, like I said, was fantastic on John Wall the whole way through. John Wall did get 28 points, but it was, I think, just under 50% efficiency. And I'd like to see the stats when Thibault was on him at all times, because that would be even less efficient. In the second half, we had 17 turnovers. And like I said, it's a testament to the Rockets' defense, but it's also just take your eye off the ball, just a little bit, and you let this team back in. What I will say about the Rockets, they seem like a really fun team. Joel Embiid and DeMarcus Cousins seemingly just didn't stop laughing with each other the whole game, which I thought was a nice change on what you normally see, the uber competitive sort of spirit, and that was just rather nice. I thought in the last 3 minutes we were 2 out of 12 field goals in that fourth quarter, also just inexcusable. But we won. Who's really asked? Joel Embiid had like I said, just a bit below average game by the eye test at the very least. 30-point triple double near enough. Absolute menace. Matisse, 4 steals, 1 block. Curry 25 points, Harris 24 and 5, and as usual, Tobias Harris way where you don't notice it, but he's done it and he was fantastic once again. Him working in that mid range is really fun to see all the time. And of course, he'll hit his threes, but him in that mid range is just so fun to watch, I think. But anyway, that was the Rockets game. Goodness me, I don't even remember who we have next, but whoever we have, I'm assuming Ben Simmons is going to be back, and I'm assuming we're going to have to just be a little bit better at what we do. But anyway, that's all from me, guys, and I'll see you next time.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.